Hit the subscribe button and activate the bell icon for more videos like this. I hesitate because Reddit might be the most intolerant when it comes to differing views. But here it goes. People against gay marriage, what is your best supporting argument that does not include religion? Former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard had a very interesting reason for not supporting gay marriage. She was against marriage as a whole, saw it as an archaic and redundant institution which promoted a religious agenda and was inherently anti-women. She refused to support the expansion of marriage when she had strived since young adulthood to put an end to it as a whole. Can't say I am against gay marriage, but that is the only argument I've heard against it that makes near any sense. I don't think the state should sanction any marriages. If you want to get married by the state, it should be called what it is, a civil union, regardless of straight or gay. Marriage is a religious thing that the government should have no say in. If a church wants to marry any union of two people, I say power to them. My main argument against is that the state shouldn't have any say in marriage whatsoever, not anything against gays. The Supreme Court of Iowa asked exactly the same question in a high-profile civil rights case. They got these 5 replies, which presumably are the best that a large, well-funded legal effort could muster. Tradition is important, and banning gay marriage maintains tradition. The court rejected this as circular reasoning, rather than an actual reason, and noted that it applies equally well to, say, interracial marriage. Children are important, and banning gay marriage promotes an optimal environment for raising them. Now, this one is not quite as trivial as the previous one, since taking care of children is actually a valid objective. However, the evidence is pretty clear that there's not a significant difference in outcomes in child rearing. And even though some amount of uncertainty always remains, it's dangerous to ban things based on vague suspicions. And then, of course, there are plenty of other groups of people who you might want to ban from marrying on this criterion: sex offenders, say, or people who'd been convicted of violent crimes. And what the hell is up with banning gay marriage rather than gay parenthood? The court concluded that this argument is obviously not the real reason, but just some after-the-fact BS rationalization. Banning gay marriage will raise birth rates somehow. Babies, babies, babies. The court rejected this argument as making not a lick of sense. The briefs, the record, our research, and common sense do not suggest such an outcome. They quickly move on to the next argument. Banning gay marriage will promote the stability of straight marriages. Rejected for being, as far as the court could tell, completely unsupported by any kind of evidence. Marriage costs the government money, so banning gay marriage is thrifty. This argument applies equally well to banning marriage among any group of people. New rule: you can't get married if you're left-handed. The court ruled unanimously that there was no rational reason for banning gay marriage. In fact, they seemed kind of embarrassed at the poor excuses for arguments listed above, and Iowa has allowed gay marriage ever since. Is this question about governmental recognition of same-sex marriages or a moral opposition to same-sex marriage? If it is about governmental recognition of same-sex marriage, then I am against it, because I don't think the government should recognize any marriages. I think marriage should be a personal and/or religious institution, and the government should really stay out of that. If it is about moral opposition to same-sex marriage, my belief is nearly 100% religious-based, and I admit that. However, leaving religion out of it, I believe that the family unit is the cornerstone of a stable society and civilization, and I believe that the traditional family unit of a man, a woman, and children is the optimal family unit. However, these are just beliefs absent of hard facts, so I can't very well in good conscience inflict them upon someone else, thus my answer to why the government should not be involved in marriage. It should not be understood as gay marriage, since marriage for gays, but marriage that includes gays, i.e. the marriage is the same for all and is extended to gays, which is different. Because in the first case, it is something specific to gays and one would be wondering why it should be of any concern of any other people. In the second case, it is a communal good whose definition is changed by the inclusion of an extra group. This extension changes the definition for everyone, and thus everyone has a right to have a word on the matter. It is not the business of Canadians to decide how Mexicans define themselves, but it would become Canadians' business if suddenly Mexicans were to claim that they are Canadians. That's to first answer the objection that gay marriage doesn't do anything to other people's marriage. People have to understand what marriage is initially about. Marriage is not about recognizing a couple's love or whatever romantic BS that came about in the 20th century. Marriage is initially a way to assign paternity to a man, because for the longest time, there was no way to know who the father of a child was. Marriage allowed to assign paternity. The husband is the father, period. Fatherhood has always been, until paternity tests, a strictly social role, unlike motherhood, which is both a biological and a social role. Yet, there is an unavoidable biological fact at the origin of marriage. Why is it important to assign paternity? Well, it is only important in some societies, i.e., those where children are brought up by their parents, which, unless people reject basic science, which happens often in the USA, must be a male and a female ever since sexual reproduction came to be. Some societies function with a communal type of upbringing, or other types, but not Western societies. This is actually changing indeed, and some people can regret that, just like one can object to polygamy, which works perfectly well in many countries around the world. Most people seem to not realize that marriage actually protects women, because, as anyone can see regarding single parents, it is women that are abandoned with the children, rarely the other way around. It is actually why marriage became a religious sacrament in medieval Europe. Yes, for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, marriage was a least bad solution, but certainly not something worth praising. Marriage allowed women to not be repudiated anymore by forcing men to keep their wives. The church fought hard on that, even with kings, cf. Robert II of France, which used to leave them destitute and with kids, so overall not good for society. There is a biological barrier there. Women bear children, men don't. Having a child for a man is only a sex adventure. Not the case for women, so it is not surprising that they end up with the kids most of the time. Flash forward to nowadays. The thing is, marriage has, in practice, lost its use. People don't even realize why it's there anymore. They'll say it's to celebrate their love and whatnot, and women get repudiated in practice. Single parents are mostly women. Another thing that will have a tremendous anthropological change: paternity test. Now paternity has become exactly like maternity, a link founded by biology. This people, you won't see the end of it. How it is not because practice differs from theory that theory should be discarded. One can regret that people are not polite anymore. Should we ditch politeness just because people aren't? The existence of a norm, even if it is not followed, still gives an idea of collective values. It was the case with marriage, although no longer the case in practice. It was an institution that was the foundation of the nuclear family. So what has gay marriage got to do with all that? Well, gay marriage is the nail in the coffin. By definition, a gay couple is infertile, hence the automatic follow-up to gay marriage. Surrogate mothers, artificial insemination without medical cause, etc. So with a marriage that includes gays, now there is not even a pretension, as for infertile heterosexual couples or couples who didn't want kids, to have anything to do with recognition of paternity. True, the practice of modern monogamous marriage has been far from what the theory was originally, so much that the theory is different for many people. So in effect, gay marriage is the recognition of the demise of marriage. That is why the argument that gay marriage doesn't do anything to other people is wrong. It does. It's the official end of what marriage as a norm has been, because it has changed the meaning of the norm. So gay marriage destroys the norm of what marriage was, the framework of family, and I have to stress that for people who will have a hard time understanding. Gay marriage didn't destroy the practice, it's been in tatters for a while now. It heralds the new meaning of marriage: love, love, love. But no one needs marriage to love. Since you don't need marriage to be a father either anymore, thanks paternity test, then marriage has no more meaning and as such, should be an institution that should now be discarded, like jousting, dueling, engagement ceremonies, etc. If marriage is what gay marriage is, then what use does it have? The family has no use of it anymore, and indeed many countries in Europe have already seen a steep decline of marriage because it doesn't serve any purpose in practice when you have collective systems in place to take care of women and their children. If it is to publicly show your love, etc., then just do your fancy ceremony, no need to involve officials in it. As someone who is personally against gay marriage for religious reasons, I do not believe there is any grounds for the United States to ban gay marriage as an institution. As the land that prides itself on freedoms of all sorts for its people, it should give gay couples the freedom to marry. The forefathers of the U.S. created the nation so that no man would have his freedoms deprived of him because of the government's biases towards religion and societal norms. The only time that the U.S. should deprive people of freedom is when they are using that freedom to deprive others of freedom and safety. At this point in the debate, with the way our society has defined homosexuality as simply another option, being gay versus straight is no different or harmful than being white versus black. So in the same way our country got rid of segregation and lack of rights between races, it too should get rid of any segregation and lack of rights for different sexual orientations. I hesitate because Reddit might be the most intolerant when it comes to differing views. But here it goes. The institution of marriage honors and recognizes the distinction between male and female. This is not to propagate hatred, but to acknowledge that there are indeed inherent differences between the sexes. Changing the definition of marriage to include same-sex couples, or any other inclusion, in effect says that gender does not matter. In other words, gender is irrelevant. If gender is irrelevant in marriage, the most basic of institutions, then it is irrelevant elsewhere, too. For instance, why is there a gender segregation in change rooms and bathrooms? Of course every man thinks this is a great idea because we could see more naked women. But what about protecting children from predators? In Canada, where I live, as an indirect consequence of legalizing state-sanctioned gay marriage, the recognition of distinction in gender is unraveling. Now if a 40-some-year-old perverted would-be sex offender wants, he can choose to go into the girls' change room, in the guise that today he feels like he is a woman. And there is nothing that can be done to stop him, or to protect the little girl he might be preying on. And please don't think I'm comparing homosexuals to sex offenders. I obviously acknowledge the two are unrelated. I'm merely demonstrating a consequence we are now experiencing because of the redefinition of the institution of marriage. Having said all of that, I believe homosexuals are equal, deserve equal rights, and should be treated with love and respect. And that comes from my religious belief that all are created in the image of God. But frankly, I could give less of a crap what religious reasons are for how marriage is defined. Lastly, I am for civil unions. It may only be a semantic, but that semantic carries with it protections. Of course, since I'll be downvoted into oblivion, I will say that this is only my opinion, and I'm not going door to door or trying to force my views on anyone. I would say there's an important distinction we have to make when we talk about this. There's two parts of marriage. The first one is sharing your benefits and legal rights with your partner. The second part is going to church, celebrating and having a good time. Now giving a stable argument for the first part that I mentioned is very hard, and I would also say it's wrong. There's no reason that homosexuals should get less benefits, not being able to share legal rights like two heterosexual people. That's just absurd. The other part is more tricky, however. Marriage by going to church is a religious act after all, and you're basically asking the religious to ignore their own religion, so you can get married the real way. The problem, however, that this sort of marriage is just something we have made up, and trying to force priests into marrying you, which can be against their own religion, is wrong, no matter how you bend it. I'm all for equal rights and I value those very highly. It's important, however, to make a distinction between the religious and the other part of marriage, and also respect that churches may not want to marry gay people. This shows, in my opinion, once again how most religions are outdated and usually wrong on many aspects, but I guess that's what happens when you live in a pretty huge secular society like Sweden. Thanks for listening to. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more videos like this. What do you think about these statements? And what is your opinion on gay marriage in general? Are you in favor of it? Or are you against it? Let us know in the comments below.